Welcome. I'm Rielly Karsh.
I'm Tovah Copan.
We are thrilled to bring you the We Go Boldly podcast.
Let's talk big burning questions, life changes, and maybe a bit of personal business.
Let's be bold and brave together. Are you ready?
I am. Here comes the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to We Go Boldly, the podcast. We are excited to have you with us today, and I personally am a little bit sad. This is our last episode of season 15. No, season 9, episode 15. I'm getting it backwards.
Fast
It's all right.
forward.
Yeah, I got excited. There will be a season 15 probably, but we're not there yet. Anyway, back on topic. I'm Rielly, as you know, and I am excited to have you guys here. And like I said, I'm a little bit sad to be ending our season on How is Your Heart? Though appropriately today, we are talking about letting go. So before we get into all of that exciting goodness, let me say hello to my co-host and see how she is feeling today. How are you today, Tovah? What's happening?
Well, if we're going to be honest, I woke up with a migraine, so there's that.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, hopefully you're listening to this between the beginning and end of the school holiday. If you have children that would give you a school holiday. But we are recording this prior to the start of the school holidays. So the to-do list is long. My desire to watch Hallmark movies and drink hot chocolate is strong. But yeah, I would say, it's good. I am both sad and ready to say goodbye to this
Yeah.
season.
Yep.
And mainly because we've been planning out next season. So I'm excited for next season, which is why I'll be okay. But I'm really thankful for this season, not just because of the question that we've been talking about, this how is your heart question, but because it has gotten me to approach life a lot more with what question should I be asking myself to make sure that I have the experience that I want to have over the next 2 weeks. So I know that was something we just talked about during our weekly circle was
Right.
how do we handle the next couple weeks of a very, very busy time of year, and what do we do during the next 2 weeks? And then for me, it was what questions can I ask myself when I'm making decisions as to how to approach my day or my task list or whatever to make sure that I'm getting out of the weeks what I want to get out of them. And so I really like that this has gotten me to ask myself questions rather than what are the things I have to do to make this a great couple weeks? It's what questions should I be asking throughout the next couple weeks to make sure that I am ending them feeling the way I want to be feeling.
Yeah.
So I like the approach that this has lent to my life.
Yeah, I agree. Which brings us to our topic today, actually. And as I said before, we're talking about letting go. And when I was researching this episode, I came upon a title and it's Unleashing the Magic of Letting Go. And I honestly can't remember where I read it. And I'm sorry that I'm not crediting people. I don't like doing that, but I can't remember and I didn't write it down. So there you go. It's Unleashing the Magic of Letting Go. And the reason I bring that up is because every word in that title for me makes sense and ties into this how is your heart concept. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about why, other than the obvious of why we're ending a season on letting go, which is, vaguely cliched, but also I think it's the end of the year and it's the end of for me, a personal season. And so not, and when I say season, I think everyone understands, I mean a time in my life. And so I feel very excited about this idea of making it, letting go being magical and something you are in control of, as opposed to something that happens to you. And we talk a lot about letting go of control, but in this instance, we're talking about choices, right? That we
Mm,
have the choice to let go. It might be a very hard choice, but we have the choice. And for me, recognizing that, and it's something I've recognized for, I think, a fairly long time now, but maybe not put into practice in a way that was as meaningful for me as it is at this particular moment in my timeline. And so being able to let go in a meaningful way intentionally, and I said that sentence backwards, so you can put it all together in the right order. But being able to intentionally let go of what I need to let go of is magical, and it is liberating. And I can unleash that on both myself, the people around me, and additionally the entire universe. I can just let it all out. And I think that is so freeing. So that's what we're talking about today. And that is really at the root of, for me, what makes my heart feel um I want to say solid. That's the word that's coming into my head, but I don't know that that's the word I mean. So we'll come back to it and I'll see. But first, as we do, let's give some definitions to kind of get us all on the same page. So when we're talking about letting go, we're talking about essentially we're talking about surrendering. So that
mm.
means to stop fighting or to release your grip on something. And in this case, often that something is emotional, mental, um, not physical, right? And so when we talk about surrender, we talk about the acceptance of what is, the faith that all is well, and that I am not necessarily the person controlling what is and whether it's well or not. It will be okay. And so all of that put together requires a deep level of acceptance. And this to me is the hardest part, because this requires you to let go of control and to embrace, the experiences, thoughts, and feelings that are happening when they're happening and not fight against them, no matter what they are, good, bad, neutral. Just embracing the experience of living in a complicated time and world and life. So all of that puts, when you put all that together in a basket, you get this concept of letting go that we're talking about today.
Yeah, and I need to pick better words for my words of the year, but my word of the year this year, I think, was accept. Because letting go and acceptance is all part of the path to forgiveness, right? And if you think about the concept of forgiveness as being something that you do for yourself that you don't do for other people, but that you do for yourself, then you need to have acceptance as part of it. And I knew that that was the piece that I was with. And so that's why I picked that word of the year. And of course, um, I had many things then join my life that meant like I just was like, okay, I guess this is what's happening right now. Like, all right, this is how, okay, this is what's going to be happening. And it's out of my control and I have
Right.
to accept it. And I was not given, I mean, I guess I was given a choice. And I feel like a lot of the work, Rielly, that you and I have done and I've done in therapy was like prepared me to be, not that you're ever prepared to handle a bad medical diagnosis, but prepared me to be able to like handle it and be like, okay, that's how we're going to do it. Okay, here we
Right.
go. Um, but yeah, I think that this idea of letting go and being able to surrender is so important. And on one hand, it is really important on like this higher level of functioning as a person so that you can like exist in the world. But I also see it as a thing that can be done very day to day. Like letting go is a choice that you can make every single day. It has to be actually that you
Right.
make every single day.
I think that's
And
the more important choice, is the
yeah,
daily small letting go.
and moment to moment. And I this week I went out to eat with my boys, and we went out, and my 7-year-old was very displeased about being going out, which is his general state because he would prefer to be home at all the times. But he was having big feelings, and he was having very big feelings, and he was angry about something. And not to say that he should let go of his anger and just not feel his anger, but you can also to, you can choose what controls you, right? So on one hand, so I'm using his as an example, not to put all of this on a 7-year-old, but on one hand, we have very little that we can control out in the world, but we can control what can control us. Like if he had more emotional maturity, his emotional maturity is very age appropriate. But if he was 9 or 10, even, um, like his 10-year-old brother, he could be both frustrated with the situation, not all the time, but sometimes, and still say, like, but I'm not going to let that control me right now. I'm still going to allow myself to have fun. I'm still going to allow myself to enjoy this dinner. I'm not going to I'm going to let go of that right now, or I'm not going to give that the control. Like, and it it's both surrendering, and I feel like it can be surrendering to the moment. And if and I'm circular in my thoughts, but like if you're holding on so tightly to something, you can't even surrender in the moment. You can't enjoy what you're experiencing. You can't be present because you are holding so hard onto something else.
Right.
I was just listening to a podcast, an old podcast this year, but older, of Anna Hendricks. And she was talking about how she, in her therapy process, she journaled. And for a lot of people, journaling is a good thing. And for her, it was basically a chance to write down all the ways that she'd been wronged. And she just wrote and wrote and wrote about all the things people were doing to her that was wrong, and that the way people, like, it was hurting her. And it was like the opposite of letting go, like it wasn't helping her. It wasn't,
Right.
it was holding on to things. It wasn't allowing her to be present. So I think that, we can talk about letting go as we enter into the new year, and it's so important, but it's really important that we remember that it is a choice that we make every single day, every single minute. Like, how are we going to hold on to this? What are we going to do with this information? How are we going to process it? How are we going to
Right.
accept it
Right.
before we move on?
Yeah, absolutely. It's important to remember that letting go is not avoidance or suppression of
Yeah.
feelings or experiences. It's also important to know that some things are harder to let go of than others, right? Like part of why we're talking about the day-to-day letting go is because that is the foundational practice that allows you to move on to those bigger things you want to let go of, right? If you learn how to let go of the small slights that happen to you on a daily basis, right? Like somebody cuts you off in line, they get your name wrong at the coffee shop, your boss isn't as nice to you as they should be, somebody forgets your birthday, like the smaller things that build up during the day. If you learn how to let go of those, it moves you in the direction of being able to let go of the larger hurts and the larger
Yeah.
misgivings and failures and flaws and hurts and things of that nature. um but it is not the same as avoiding or suppressing your feelings. So you're not walking away from unpleasant emotions or experiences. You're not pushing them down and sticking them in a box and not ever dealing with them. You're letting them flow through you. So it's a state of flow. Like if you want to get into the woo of it, it's the difference
Mm-hmm.
between being in a state of flow and not being in a state of flow. So being connected to the universe and allowing yourself to be present in the experience that you're having at any given moment is being in the state of flow. And that's when, truthfully, really great things happen in our lives. And whether we're consciously creating those things or not, that's when probably the best things that will ever happen to us will happen. Um, but I want to
Well,
talk about, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, in terms of, I always think letting go in terms of anger, but in terms of grief, for example, right? Grief is an ocean, and it comes in waves. And Sometimes it knocks you down and you don't know, you don't plan on it coming, right? Maybe you go months without grief, or maybe the grief is so fresh and it feels overwhelming. But I think when you're grieving the loss of somebody, maybe specifically, and you get to a point where you laugh at something and then you're like, oh my God, I just laughed. I shouldn't have laughed because I'm grieving. And then you have something fun happen, or you want to do something fun, or maybe, the timing is weird and somebody passes right before the holidays, or someone passes right before a vacation. Um, the point that to all of this is that your grief doesn't go away, and no one's asking you to put it away or put it in a box, but you are also allowed to feel the joy of your experiences and the laughter and to be present. And so you can let the grief go through you. You can also say, I can feel both feelings. I can hold both feelings at the same time. I can be both joyful for my experience at this moment, or I can think this is really funny. I can be glad that I know somebody in my community whose husband passed away, and she had Taylor Swift tickets. And so she went to the Taylor Swift concert like 2 weeks later, and someone criticized her. And she's like, he would have he would have wanted me to go. He knew I had these tickets. Like, he would have wanted me to sit at home and not go to the Taylor Swift concert.
Right.
And so I think that sometimes I often think of letting go as an anger thing or fear. But I think even with grief, it can be the ability to just hold both feelings at the same time, allow yourself to be present, and allow something to pass through you.
Yeah, I think letting go can really be anything, right? It could be letting
Yeah.
go of grief, it could be letting go of anger, it can be letting go of trauma, it can be letting go of mistakes you made in the past, things you said that you shouldn't have said, feelings you have about yourself in the past, feelings about what might happen in the future. You can and ought to let go of all kinds of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things that weigh you down, things that pull at you in whatever direction that you don't want to go. And one of the reasons I think, and you mentioned fear as something to let go of, but I think, and I agree, obviously, but I think fear is one of the biggest things holding us back from letting go. And the fear itself can take a whole host of different forms, right? Fear typically leads us to seek control. It wants us to take control of everything and hold it tight and make sure it goes the way we want it to go. We get the outcome we expect. But the funny thing about fear is that it often makes you more uptight, right? It makes you more stressed. It makes you more anxious and it makes you less in control. It makes you more likely to lash out or to do things that you wouldn't necessarily want to do. And so fear itself is something that gets in the way of us, being able to be in control of our feelings or in control of our decision making, right? Because if you're making decisions based on fear, you're not really making decisions based on what you actually want or believe or value. You're making decisions based on something that might possibly happen in the future, and you have no idea if that's really going to happen. Um, and so fear itself gets in the way of us letting go. And, it creates this sort of uptight, intense, controlling behavior. And it might not even manifest itself in a way that you recognize, right? Like it might not be that you're like, no, I'm not going to go into the city because I'm afraid that I'm going to, get on the subway and something bad's going to happen. And then why would I go to that museum? And, you go down this path of like, what might happen? And
Right.
I think that leads us to missing out on all kinds of things. Um, so, I think the other aspect of holding on and people getting attached to holding on is that you are holding on to what you're used to. So sometimes it's like the enemy I know versus the enemy I don't know, right? Or what is the word? The devil I know versus the
The
devil I
devil.
don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so people get stuck in that aspect of fear as well, right? Like I know this is bad. I know I don't want to be in this, but what if where I wind up is worse?
Right.
And you get comfortable in that sort of misery, and there you are. You're stuck in it. So letting go is where we want to move towards in order to get out of that cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of times people don't realize that like, to speaking it to this concept of fear, that it's fear behind whatever the reason is that they're doing something, like you said, that that you may be holding on to anger or something, or grief or whatever. And really it's, well, if I don't stay angry, then people won't know that this person wronged me. Like, and it's like the fear that people won't, they won't know, or maybe that you will forget, right? Like,
Or that you're saying it's okay, that
or
whatever
that you're saying it's
happened is
okay. Yes.
acceptable behavior. And that's not
Right.
what we're saying for sure.
100%. Um, and then I think that, like, there's also the fear that, you know, if you're grieving somebody and you allow yourself to feel something other than grief, that you didn't care, or that you're going to forget them. I mean, there's so much that fear controls, or okay, that's not the right word, but uh affects, that we don't even realize that that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We need to take a quick break. So let's do that. And when we come back, I want to talk about kind of what holding on does to you emotionally. We've touched on it, but let's get a little bit more into that when we come back right after this break.
Know what I really love to do?
Take baths, go for walks, read, drink margaritas, hike.
Yeah, not what I was referring to. You know, we're recording a commercial right now.
I do, but I'm thinking outside the box, being adaptable.
As I was saying, what I love to do is host our live monthly workshops.
Oh, right. That's what we were talking about. Me too. They are a lot of fun to put together and host every month. And we can bring margaritas, so.
Join us for live conversation as we get a bit deeper into topics near and dear to our hearts. We go through everything from self-care to setting boundaries.
We share coaching tips, practical advice, and take questions from the audience. It's a whole lot of fun.
Sign up for our newsletter today at goboldlyinitiative.com/contact to make sure you hear about all the upcoming Go Boldly workshops.
You definitely don't want to miss out. Now, back to that show. All right, welcome back to the show. And as I said before we took a break, I want to talk a little bit more about sort of the emotional burden, the stress, the anxiety that comes with holding on to the past, right? And because that a lot of letting go relates to holding on to things that happened in the past, whether they're things you did or somebody else did, or things that were said or feelings that were had, all of those things happen. And sometimes we, like we were saying before, we trick ourselves into thinking that if we let go, then we're giving up, right? Like that we're saying, oh, sure, this horribly abusive behavior was acceptable, and therefore
Right.
I am, I'm over it, which is not, obviously not realistic and not what happens. But it's also tied up in the concept of failure, right? Like that if we've moved on from it, somehow we've failed. And I don't know that that's a conscious thought process for most people, but I suspect that it is definitely there subconsciously when you're thinking about forgiving someone, particularly, or moving on from a relationship, that inside of all those feelings and that fear of letting go of those things, there's a fear of failure and a fear of acknowledging that something went wrong, and somehow that means you have failed. And I think so many of us are afraid of failing and afraid of making a mistake and acknowledging the mistake that we made. It's something that parenting has rapidly taught me is, you've got to acknowledge your mistakes. You have to be able to say, no, I made a mistake and it's okay. I'm human. I'm invariably flawed. Like That's a part of the human experience. But it's very uncomfortable, right? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't come naturally to us. And I think that's cultural conditioning, and we could get into a whole nother episode on that. Um, but it doesn't come naturally to be like, yeah, I made a mistake, oops, and move on, especially if it's a big mistake, right? Or
Yeah.
especially if it's like a complicated mistake where it wasn't a mistake, but part of it was. And, you know, like maybe you had a marriage and it didn't work out, and there were parts that were amazing and there were parts that weren't. And that's, you know, unpacking all of that is very complicated. So letting go might feel like failing. And that, as I said, I think most people really, really struggle with that idea.
Yeah. And I think most people, I mean, I think also people struggle oftentimes more with the appearance of failure than with actual failure.
Mm,
So there's
yeah.
that fear as well. Um, I think we probably, can talk a little bit, into this concept of like when we are not letting go, like what happens and why does this make sense to talk about with how is your heart? Because when you're not letting go of something, um, life feels heavier, right? Like it, you can feel, um, at least I can feel more weighted down, right? And you can be, um, more, you can feel stuck, you can feel tired, and the farther you get away from the event, whether it be a trauma or a way that somebody has wronged you or an experience or a feeling, the more less associated your feelings become with that experience. Not really, they're still very associated with that experience, but consciously associated with that
Right.
experience. And so you are left unsure of why you feel this way. And so it could be anger towards somebody all the time. And you don't know why what they do anger you. Because if like anybody else did it, it would not bother you at all. Like their behavior would be totally normal and totally fine. But when they do it, it enrages you. And then you start feeling like, well, what's wrong with me? Why am I angry all the time? And you forget that maybe you're not actually angry all the time, that there's just this one incident with this one person that you have this experience. And maybe what actually it is this person did do something to you. Not to you, but or maybe to you, I don't know. But like decades earlier, or 5 years earlier, or six
Right.
months earlier, and you have not processed that. And so you are stuck. You're stuck in your anger towards them. So when they, I don't know, forget where the car keys are. I'm like mixing a totally bunch of different examples, but like if they forget where the car key, because none of these are actually applicable, but um, they forget where the car keys are, suddenly you're enraged. And you're like, well, that doesn't seem like a proportional response to what's happened here.
Right.
Um, but it's because you haven't let go of something.
Right.
And by letting go, as you said, it's not moving on, it's processing it. You haven't
Right.
processed it, you haven't experienced it, you haven't allowed the feelings to flow through you. Um, and so you are then left stuck,
Yeah.
stuck reacting in not a proportional way to something.
Right. And so, you know, in researching this and like reading some studies and reading some of the psychology behind letting go, I did get a nice little 3-part list, which I appreciated the only 3 parts to it. But you know, some signs that it's time to let go, right? Uh, what you just said, that feeling of being stuck, the idea
Mm.
that you're stuck in a situation or a space, a feeling, whatever. That's a good sign that it's time to work towards letting go of whatever is causing you to feel stuck. If you are experiencing more pain than joy related to a person, a situation, a feeling, whatever the thing is that has you stuck, if it's causing you more pain than joy, that's a good sign to let go. I think that particularly applies to relationships. And then if you're realizing your needs are not being met, and I want to note that that applies to you as to yourself, right? If
Mm,
you are
mhm.
not meeting your own needs, it's a good sign that you are stuck on something that you need to let go of. I have been there. I have done this. I have sat ruminating about things that I've done or said or experienced and felt horrible about them. And I'm not in those instances, I'm not meeting my own needs because it doesn't serve me to sit in those feelings, to sit in that experience. That there's no learning happening there. There's no relief. There's no positive outcome to sitting in those self-flagellating feelings, right? It's just not something that's going to improve your life or anyone else's life.
Yeah.
We want to learn from our mistakes, and I've definitely done that, but sitting in those feelings was not helping me. And so learning to let go and have compassion for yourself is integral to being able to let go and feel the magic of letting go, the freedom of it. So I feel like that's super important to recognize, because oftentimes when we're talking about letting go, we're thinking of other people and we're thinking of things other people have done to us or things that have happened to us, not things we ourselves have done. And I think sometimes those are the things we need to let go of the most, because as a culture, we are very hard on ourselves. And it's good to push yourself. It is not good to beat yourself. And there's a very big difference between those two things. So on that note, let's talk about how liberating it is to let go. I'm going to move in a more positive direction, I guess. The first most obvious thing that happens when you let go is the reduction of stress and anxiety. I mean, it seems like, duh, of course it does, but it bears saying because it's great. It feels good. We all want it. So think about that when you're like, oh, letting go is so hard and it sucks and I don't want to do it. But it's great. You will feel so much better afterwards. That's the carrot and the stick.
Well, and I also think that it can feel great. It can feel great on a big level. It can feel great on a smaller level. So let's tell like a very, very quick story. I'll try to tell a quick story. So I'm not good at that. But I was talking to a friend who had an experience at like after school pickup, right? Where she was watching someone else's kid and the kid ended up getting a bloody nose because of whatever. And another mom who she didn't know very well called the kid's mom to be like, hey, this kid just got a bloody nose. And it kind of felt like to my friend, this woman was sort of tattling on her almost.
Sure.
But on the other hand, it could also feel like it could also theoretically be that she was just trying to be helpful.
Right.
But like she didn't do the, hey, I'm going to call her mom kind of thing. So, and this was their first real interaction beyond just like knowing each other's kids and hanging out. So we were kind of talking it out, and because she's like, I don't know how to feel about this. And I said, well, I would probably, if I could do it, if I could let go of my feelings, because there would be lots of feelings like, don't you think I'm good enough to like watch somebody else's kids? Like, it's not my fault that this kid got like bumped in the face, like whatever. I said, I would probably like, I wouldn't forget what she did. Like, I wouldn't, in case this is a reflection of her personality. Like maybe she's a meddler. Maybe she is all of these bad things that we're giving her. We don't know her. So I wouldn't forget it, because I think that's a really important part of letting go. Like you're not forgetting what happened. You're not learning from your mistakes or other people's mistakes. You're not like you're not being naive, right?
Yes.
Like you're not setting yourself up to get hurt again in the same way.
You're not turning off. Yeah, you're not turning off your inner voice.
Right.
You're not like, oh, red flags, who cares?
Yeah. You're like, is it a circus? Should there be more red flags? But I said, so, I think we remember that was her reaction, but why we also are like, let's give her a second impression, right? Like we don't need to follow the first impressions kind of adage. Like we are adults. We can choose to follow a second impressions adage where we care about the second impressions that somebody gives us. And so we kind of talked it out. We realized like, she was becoming closer friends with the mom of the daughter, like the kid who got hurt. And maybe she was just trying to like be a good, like, who knows? We have no idea. So we can remember, but we can also just let it go, give her the
Yeah.
benefit of the doubt. And if we start seeing additional, and I don't even remember the woman's name, I keep saying I have no idea who she is, but if we start saying it, if my friend sees additional like evidence that maybe this isn't a person that she would trust, then she can be like, okay, that goes in the evidence bin.
Right.
But otherwise, it's just a one-off. It's something we just let go of.
Well,
and we live in a small town. We run into people everywhere. If
Yeah.
you can not have a bad first impression, how about like on either direction, you really try hard not to do that.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I would encourage people to let go of, and I myself worked in therapy very hard on this, is the assumption that people are out to get you or
Yes.
people are acting maliciously. That does
Yes.
not mean you ignore your instincts. If there's a bad person and they are doing something awful, we don't ignore that, right? But don't baseline assume that people are cutting you off in line because they don't like you or they want to make you miserable, or
Mhm.
that someone's standing too close to you in the grocery line because they know how much it irritates you. Nobody is thinking about you. That's the hard part. No one is. They're thinking about themselves and their lives and what's going on with them. And maybe that mom had some trauma related to a bloody nose and she was just like, oh
Right.
no, I've got to talk to this other mom. Maybe she was mean. Who knows?
Right.
Um, but my point is, the world is not out to get you. People are not out to get you. And so many people come from that perspective all the time that it creates this negative relationship with the universe around you. And
Well,
when all you're doing is thinking that everything is bad, then bad
yeah.
stuff is going to come to you. And you're attracting the energy that you're putting out.
And that is the magic of letting go, right? Is that you're not forgetting. Like, we're not saying the magic of forgetting. We're not saying the magic of like
Although sometimes
sometimes.
it would be fantastic.
We're not saying like the magic of taking a little pill and not remembering what happened.
Right. Yeah,
Right. We're
this is
saying
not
that
the Matrix.
so many references, by the way, in the last like 6 weeks to the Matrix has me really wanting to watch that movie.
You're
Just
plugged
because,
in, man.
yeah. Well, I would almost feel better at this point if that were the case,
Yeah,
you
true.
know? Um, but anyway, so, but yeah, so it's not the magic of forgetting. It's not unleashing the magic of forgetting. It's
No.
unleashing the magic of letting go. It's saying like, okay, we, and I try to tell my kids this, like, we know 5% of what's going on in somebody's life. Like,
You have no
if
idea.
that,
Yeah.
right? So let's give the person the benefit of the doubt. We don't forget what happened. We don't forget that, like, okay, this is potentially a red flag about this parent that maybe we have to be cautious about them. But like, let's collect more evidence, and we're not going to like search for the evidence. We're not going to be like asking other parents. We're just going to
Right.
like that would be weird. We're just going to like keep it in the back file. And as we get to know this person, because I think they may be new to the school, I don't remember. We either can dismiss it as being like a one-off as we got to know them, or we learned that they had a trauma about bloody noses or something.
Yeah. Who knows?
Or we're like, oh no, this tracks with their behavior. That
Right.
makes sense.
Like
And
if they're
now,
constantly tattling on you.
yeah, and now we're going to
so
be
be it.
cautious about their behavior.
Right.
So like, we get to decide though. That's the magic of letting go. Like, I think that is the magic. That is what gets unleashed, is that we spend so much time on this podcast talking about you don't control anything. That like there are actually so many things that you do get to make choices about in your life.
Yeah.
And this is one of them. Like,
right.
how much power you give to other things.
Yeah. Yes.
Is a choice.
Yes. And it is so different than trying to control the outcome of something, right?
Yeah.
So when we say you're not in control, we mean you're not in control of what other people do, think, feel, and
Yeah.
you're not in control of what happens in the end. All you are in control of is yourself and your feelings and your thoughts and your actions, and for the most part. And so that's the letting go comes in choosing yourself in
Yeah.
choosing how you want to live in the world. And so let's talk. I know we have to wrap up pretty soon, but I want to talk about strategies for letting go because
Yeah.
we like to teach things on this podcast. So what? I was reading and reading and reading, and I kept thinking, like, you just let go. Like, that's how you let go. You just do it. And obviously, we have more advice than that for you, but there were lots of people who were like, listen, sometimes it's as easy as recognizing that you're tightly trying to control things and then you just let go. You just
Yeah.
ungrip it, right? Now that requires conscious, intentional, deliberate shifting, right, of thought processes and into out of the energy that is uptight, controlling energy and into the energy that is surrender. And that is a choice, like we were just talking about. It's a choice you have to make. So it's not just like, oh, I'm just going to let go, right? Like that's rarely what happens. I mean,
Just gotta let go of this.
sometimes, like if it's a minor thing, if it's like the hill I'm not going to die on with my kid, then it's, yeah, I'm just,
Yes,
I'm just going to
100%.
let go. It's whatever. I'm not going to fight this. Um, and then other times it's a lot harder, but all the time it's conscious, right? It's always like, yeah, I'm not doing this today, or I'm not engaging in this today. So one thing that I really liked that I read is the opportunity to ask yourself some questions when you're stuck in this sort of like, what's happening mode, and like, am I letting go of this? Am I not letting go? What am I doing? And so the first question to ask yourself is, what am I afraid will happen if I do let go? Right? Like, what's the worst possible outcome? So that's one, like the first step in thinking about letting go. And if it's like, okay, well, I can deal with all of those outcomes, great. Who The next step is find out whose business you're in, right? Are you in things that you can directly influence, or are you trying to control something that is just wildly out of your control, right? Like, are you trying to be in charge of other people's lives or other people's business or outcomes that, obviously you can't control? And then the final question, and this is all a little esoteric, but I do think it works. The final question is, would letting go feel like freedom, right? If you did it, took a deep breath, would you feel anxious still, or would you feel free? And I think that those are really helpful tools in the process of figuring out even if you're ready to let go of something.
Yeah, and I think asking you these questions, and I think being aware of these questions, because listen, you're not going to let go of there are going to be hills that we should not pick with our children that we pick with our children. That
Oh
we're
yeah.
like, this is a
I
hill
did it
I should
last
not.
night.
Yeah, this is a hill I should not die on. I am going to die on this hill.
Right. And then you back end yourself into it and you can't get out of it because you're like,
Yeah.
oh, now if I let go, I'm
Now
gonna
I'm
look
stuck here, and you're
like I don't follow through.
like the other day at the restaurant where I'm like, if you just say you're sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I did that with putting Everett to bed last night, the night before. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm like, I never force apologies, but if you just do it this one
Right,
time,
this is one time I could like let go and
I can move
actually put
on.
you to bed.
But like, I think that if you're aware of some of these questions, you can look back and you can say, oh, I didn't need to let that control me. I don't need to do that again.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's not so that you're constantly analyzing your own life, despite our podcast that we tried not to, but we probably do a lot more than we should. But it's not just that, but it's like being aware so you can say, okay, like, and with my 7-year-old and going back to that dinner where he was really angry and kind of did not enjoy it even a little bit. And I said to him, I said, hey, you're allowed to have your big feelings and they're completely valid. I think if you would have allowed yourself, you could have enjoyed dinner. Like it was really fun. Your brothers had a lot of fun and
Yeah.
you could have had fun. And I think he kind of looked at me because he's 7. And that concept of like, no, but I'm angry. I'm angry.
Yeah.
And like, I can't set that aside. Also, like, we're just starting at his age to have the conversations of, you're angry, but aren't you really sad? Like, you saying you're angry, but I think you're actually really kind of sad and disappointed and frustrated and all of these other bigger, harder feelings
Right.
for a 7-year-old boy. But, and I think like, even if it's just speaking it out into the world and saying, huh, I am really angry, but I could have actually still had fun. I didn't need to give it all that control over me, right? Because like
Yeah.
you said, it's not feeling your feelings. It's saying, I don't need to let it control me.
Yeah.
And so I think even just having these questions there, even if you're not letting go yet, even if you're not feeling the footloose and fancy free feel freedom of unleashing the magic of letting go,
Right.
it can help you kind of reflect and go, huh, I didn't have to get sucked into that argument.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
I had this conversation a little bit with my son the other night because he threw a whopper temper tantrum at bedtime, and he's going through something, and it's fine. We'll get through it, and we're working through it and talking through it with him. But he was finally up in his bed, and I'm doing his meditation because I do meditations with my kids at night. And I'm sitting there and he keeps talking to me. And I'm like, okay, well, we're going to go to bed now. And then he's like, what was I mad about? Go, I, I don't even know, buddy. He's like, well, I was really mad, but I don't know what I was mad about. And I just found it to be a very telling moment for like he didn't even know what he was so mad about, and he probably didn't know what he was so mad about when he got mad, to be
yeah,
honest. um and I allowed his mad feelings to make me mad. That was my
yeah,
choice, right? And like I knew what I was mad about, but it also was just like this moment of like, man, I could have just let that go. And it would have been a million times easier, right? I didn't have to let my mad match his mad. Like, I didn't have to meet his energy. I could have just been like, okay, you're mad. You get to be mad, right? Um, and that brings me to another point that I read that I really like in the process of letting go, strategies for letting go, and
yeah,
that is to notice resistance,
yeah,
right? So when you are feeling like, okay, I'm going to let go of whatever, if you notice resistance either mentally or physically within you about that letting go of that thing, um, that's a really important flag, right? It's not a red flag. It's just a flag like, hey, pay attention to this feeling. If you are resisting letting go of something, why? And
yeah,
I know why I was resisting letting go of my mad, matching his mad, because I was exhausted. I was sick of fighting him at bedtime. I had been fighting with my kids all day. I was just done. And I didn't have the mental wherewithal, the bandwidth to be like,
yeah,
okay, I'm going to be a grown up right now. Um, so I just was like, I'm going to be a 7-year-old boy. Let's fight.
yeah,
Um, but the other resistance behind that for me is probably like, I really don't like feeling disrespected. Like it makes me
yeah.
super angry. And from anyone, whether it's my kids, my spouse, my friends, like that is a real, if you want to see me mad, disrespect me. And I realized, this morning maybe, that that's what was beneath all those feelings. And so that resistance to letting go of being mad about something that was like not that big of a deal, um was about a deeper feeling that I want to work on.
Well, and I think that's really important because for years, like I said, I've had this like weird reaction towards somebody where I'm like, why am I angry about this? This is so ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
and I mean, years and years and years and years. And I've been like, I need to just get over it. I need to let go. I need to let go. Why can't I let go of this? Why am I doing this? I'm nice to everybody else. Why can't I do this? And then it took a very long time to realize that I couldn't let go because I wasn't addressing the reasons that I couldn't let go. Like there were underlying things
Right.
happening and I wasn't addressing them. And so don't worry, like you probably won't be able to let go of things if they don't want to be let go of. If they're,
Yeah, yeah. You're not running any risks.
yeah, yeah. So like you can still try to let go of things, but you can also be like, okay, cool. I'm not going to get caught up in this. It's something that I tell like my parents a lot when they're hanging out with my kids and they've learned over the years, so I don't really have to tell them that much anymore. But like
Yeah.
my kids will get very, very angry at each other. Big fight, throw down, drag out. And then 2 minutes later, they are playing together, and like having the best time. And as a parent, if you get emotionally involved in the fight, it will take you 3 to 6 days to recover from it mentally and emotionally. It's kind of like when a kid gets sick and they throw up one time and the parent is sick for like 4 days.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. They're like, oh my God, I hate you. You're the worst mother ever. Everything was better before you were born. And it's like, psh, 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 psh. And you're like, oh my God, why did I do this? And it's just so much. And like, if you let yourself get emotionally involved and then they move on and you're like, what do you mean you're over it? Like, what do you mean you're fine? What? How are we fine?
Or they ask you what it was they were just so mad about that they were like throwing things at your head and screaming at you.
Exactly. 100%. And you're like, what?
Seriously?
And so now, like, my kids will fight and my parents will be like, I'm like, it's fine. It's whatever. And then they'll like because they'll make up,
Yeah.
right? And then they'll move on. And if I would have gotten emotionally attached to whatever it was that they were dealing with, and obviously there's times where I do need to figure out what it is.
Yeah, of course. But like the
But,
vast majority of those things, not even just with kids, but with people,
Yeah.
you know, you can just be like, all right, this is just a moment and I'm gonna let it go.
Once it goes, a lot of it goes back to like knowing 5% of what's going on in a person's life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So we are getting close to the end, and this outline was extensive. So
I
we're
love
not,
it. It's
we're,
like a college level course outline. I'm loving it.
we're not going to get through all of this, but I just want to note a couple other strategies sort of for letting go. Make a plan, create a letting go plan. So map it out. How are you going to let go of this thing? And question your patterns. If there are repeating patterns of behavior, like Tovah, you were just talking about, question those, like look deeper. And to get to the woo of it all, ask your inner child, right? Ask the young human that lives inside you, and whether you believe it or not, there's one in there. And see what they have to say about it, because so much of our behavior is rooted in what we learned as children, and sometimes we need to unlearn some of that, and we need to make changes into how we deal with things. So I think those are like the big ones. We can put a few more in the show notes for you guys, but those are like the big ones on how you let go. You definitely want to, as we always say, engage in mindfulness practices, right? Meditate, take walks, listen to calming music.
Hey, listen, even Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce were talking about grounding today on their podcast. Well, it was yesterday on their podcast.
Exactly.
And they were talking about like, it was hilarious. And they were talking about like being barefoot and how they didn't think it would matter if you were on concrete because it's all about like the electrical synapses of your body communing with the electrical synapses of the earth and how in caveman days when they were bare feet. But anyway, the point is grounding is a thing and you should go do it and stand in the grass in your bare feet.
Absolutely.
Taylor's boyfriend agrees.
And then, finally practicing self-compassion. And this goes to the heart of letting go of things you may not like about yourself, choices you made that you may not like, faults that you find. Letting those go is all about being compassionate with yourself. So our final little segment here is about overcoming fear and resistance. And it's similar to how to let go, but I think the biggest takeaway I got from the research that I did for this is that when we identify personally with the thing we're trying to let go of, it becomes very scary and hard to let go. And this takes me back to when I was being a lawyer, when I was actively practicing and I decided to leave my practice. So much of my identity was wrapped up in being a practicing attorney that I had no idea who I would be without it. And that caused me to stay longer than maybe my mental health could tolerate. And so often this happens in people's work experiences, right? Our identity gets so wrapped up in what it is that we do for a living. And one way to combat that, of course, is to not let that happen in the first place. But if, like me, you did not do that, then figuring out and accepting that you are a whole human, whether you are a lawyer or not, whether you are a doctor, whether you are a teacher, a nurse, a firefighter, whatever your job is, if you want to change your job, it does not change who you are as a human being. It just changes how you make money. Um, but that is super hard for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. So I think being aware of that and being aware that guilt and blaming ourselves and looking at past mistakes as if they are who we are as people becomes something that is limiting and keeps us from letting go and moving on with our lives and enjoying who we are today.
Yeah, and I think that wow, it just left. It just like left my brain. I'm letting go. I'm letting go of thoughts.
Listen, folks, practical moment of letting
It's
go.
real time
I'm gonna
letting
lean
go.
into
I
it.
was like collecting my thoughts. I was also trying to listen and not
Yeah.
just
Oh
collecting
yeah.
my thoughts.
I've been
It was
there.
all happening at the same time. I agree with what you were saying, so it wasn't going to be like mind blowing, but
Right.
it's gone.
That's all right. The only other thing I want to bring up, and I know you'll have something to say about this, is being vulnerable and using your vulnerability to build courage, to build resilience, and to recognize that no matter what you let go of or don't let go of, you're going to be okay. Like you
Yeah.
are okay. And it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel. And so when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to forgive ourselves, then it's that's it that is ultimately the magic of letting go, right? To be able to forgive and let go and not move on but move through is really sort of the magic of it all. And it's healing for the heart. It's absolutely healing for the heart.
Well, and I think to be able to stand as yourself and say, I am a fully functional adult, I'm a full person without the anger, without the fear. We all have the fear, but like without these feelings, like I don't need to hold on to these to be something. I am fully who I am without them.
Right.
And that sounds weird to say. And you're probably thinking, of course you are. But really, are you thinking that? Like when you try to let go, it's hard sometimes. Like, who would I be if I wasn't holding on to this vengeance?
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
mean, like we all love them. Well, we don't all, but a good number of people love the movies The Avengers. Like they're the Avengers. They're avenging. Like that's what they do. They don't let go,
Right.
man. They don't ever let go. They avenge. And like, and we really like them for that. Um, and so I think that we need to be willing to be recognized that we can be okay and still let go of things.
Yeah.
I also think something, and I don't want to bring up a totally brand new topic right before we're ending, but here we go, right before the ending the new year, and it has to actually do with the new year. So we talk about how we don't love resolutions. We love setting goals. So if that's what you do when you set a resolution, mazel tov. But like, I think that like we don't all put a lot of weight in the new year, you and I.
Yeah.
We love hibernating in January and then coming out
Oh,
in
I'm looking
February.
forward to it.
Yeah.
So
But
ready.
that being said, if you're like, I can't let go of things every day, I'm very busy. I have to like feed my kids dinner every single day. So the end of the year is a great time to figure out what you want to let go of.
Yeah.
We just had a full moon. If you're listening to this the day it comes out, which is the 27th, we just had a full moon yesterday, I believe, the 26th.
Mhm.
So we are still in full moon energy, which is a great time to write down what you might be wanting to let go of and burn that piece of paper in a safe environment where it won't catch your house on fire or your fingers. Um, but what I love about something that I adopted starting in 2020 was the tradition that I don't do every month, but I know it's coming every month. I know it's only 4 weeks away. At the very most, a new full moon is 4 weeks away, which if it is 4 weeks away, then you're actually on the full moon. So a new full moon is like less than 4 weeks away at any given time.
Right.
Um, and a full moon is, there's all this woo about it that I don't totally know and understand, but it's a great time to let things go. And so if you are like, yeah, every day, that sounds like an awful lot. And I don't even know what I'd want to start on. And I don't even know where to begin. And I'm fine. And I like my anger right where it is. Um, The end of the year is a great time to be like, I am going to leave this behind in 2023. I'm just going to leave it there. I'm going to put it and just not let it take it with me.
Yeah.
It's also a reason, like if you've had a really tough year, it's a reason to grab a new journal for the new year. So you're not like taking it with you if you write down things. But what I love is having this habit of every month, knowing around the full moon, I can write stuff down that I want to let go of for the next month or for the past month or whatever I want to do. And just think about it and burn that piece of paper or wash it away or scribble it out or whatever I want to do to destroy the things I'm letting go of. And it really provided a great chance to practice the art of letting go. And so I would encourage you as we wrap up, to think about ways you could implement some letting go habits, even if it's like once a month, to just reflect like, okay, the third Tuesday of every month, I don't know why it would be that, but let's just go with it. I'm going to reflect and I'm going to think about what I need to let go of or whatever it is. Because for me, at least, sometimes having that reminder, like, oh, that's right, I do this each month, is a really big help.
Yeah.
So I'm just throwing that out there. You have full moon energy right now. You have the new year coming up. It's a great time to practice, but also if you miss this month, you miss next month. There's a full moon every month. Any day is a good day to practice letting go.
Yeah.
But if you want to do something in a more ritualistic way, the full moon is a great time to do it.
Yeah. And you can use, I mean, like you said, Tovah, you could use any time marker that makes sense to you. It's just a matter of practicing, right? Like it's a matter of actually intentionally doing it.
Yeah.
So that I think is a wrap for season 9, which I keep wanting to call season 15.
Sure.
For whatever reason.
Manifesting.
I don't really have homework for you guys other than to obviously, like Tova just said, take some time to maybe make note of whether in your head or written down or in your phone, whatever, of what it is that you want to leave behind in 2023. Whether it's feelings or people or jobs or ugly socks, I don't know, whatever it is you're going to leave behind, make a note of it and let yourself feel what that feels like. And then 2 quick things. We would love for you to join our Year of You program. It is a fantastic way to figure out what it is you want to let go of in order to reach for what you really want. And so we would love to have you in that program. You can find the link on our website or on our social media. The link in our bio will bring you right there. And then lastly, we have a weekly women's circle. It is an amazing place to talk about what you want to let go of and learn how to let go. So we would love to have you there as well. And you can find links to that in all the same places. So everyone, have a fantastic new year. If you celebrate, super. If you don't, that's okay. Enjoy it anyway. Enjoy this time of year if you can. And we are so thankful for all of our listeners. We would love for you to make sure you're subscribed to our show somewhere, whether on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure you're subscribed and downloading. We would love for you to rate and review the show as well. It really helps us keep the show going and get the word out there about what we're doing. And so all the support you can give us is much, much appreciated. Until next year, everyone, we will be back. So
yeah, Happy New Year.
Happy. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much for listening to We Go Boldly podcast. We know you're busy and we love spending time with you.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. Head to Apple Podcasts right now to rate and review our show. While you're there, be sure to click that subscribe button.
Want more us time? Follow us on all the socials at Go Boldly Together.
Want even more us time? As in all the coaching pizzazz. Find us at goboldlyinitiative.com for all the info.
We will be back with more excitement, research, and deep thoughts next week.
Until then, keep on being the bold, brave, amazing people we know you already are.